This podcast is for singers who have music in their soul and want to be in the spotlight. We are INVICTA Vox Radio.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of INVICTA Vox Radio. As always, we are your hosts, Mike and
Angie Lee.
And today we are going to be talking about how to make 2021 your best 2021.
That you could possibly make it.
Right. And the funny thing is...
Not just because it's the new year, just because it is the new year. So...
Okay, little paradoxical, but we'll go with it.
It's good.
But the thing is everyone's coming out of 2020, and they're like, 2020 was a crappy year.
It was a crappy year.
And there's automatically this assumption that, oh, man, January 1st hit, so woo, new year.
It's funny because this year, that's how it usually is, but this year is funny because it's black and white this time, because every time I talk to someone about the new year, they're either like, yeah, this is an amazing fresh start. And then 50% of people are like, yeah, no, it hasn't changed. This still sucks. Like it's really weird. Like our New Year's this year was so anticlimactic. We counted down and it was like, okay, here we go.
COVID is still here. Masks are still here.
Yeah.
Life is
still kind of sucks.
But this is the important thing, right? And this is something that I've been trying to focus on a lot lately. And this is really the theme of the episode, right? And it is this idea of creating your world. If you want your world, your year, your life to be better, you have to make it better.
I know there's always going to be outside forces and exterior things that can change and alter your path. But all in all, by and large, most of what goes on in your life and in your world is of your making. And I think if most people could take accountability of that and really own that and see that if you're sitting in a pile that's a total mess, that probably 99.9% chance of that is that you created that and that it didn't happen overnight, but that you built your life to be that mess. And it's really easy to point fingers at other people. It's really easy to say that it's someone else's fault and to blame others and put guilt and shame on others for where you are in your life. And, you know, people do horrible things all the time and they do things that affect you. But by and large, your life is a conglomerate of your choices and your decisions. And so it's really hard sometimes to see that when you're sitting in the pit of that. And also, that people who are creating beautiful lives for themselves, it was not given to them and it wasn't by accident. And so that's what we want to talk about today, is just more of how do we get our lives on fire? How do we create a life that we want and put these glasses on, or I mean, rather take the glasses off of whatever filter we're looking at through and say, okay, if this is all up to me, what do I have to do to change or to grow or to create?
Right. And this is something that I feel like we've kind of touched upon in several podcasts, but this time we just got to hammer it home.
Yeah, because you guys are going to choose if 2021 is good for you or not. I mean, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world right now. Like it is bonkers on every front, and it's stressful and paralyzing for a lot of people, and everyone wants to blame their bad fortune on someone else. So let's talk about how, even though the world seems to be going to hell in a handbasket right now, how can we in our own lives impact this world for good? And how can we create our world to be the one that we want it to be, and to see our reality and to have the people in our lives that are enriching it and to make this world a better place?
Yeah, and I feel like the bulk of that comes back to something that I've really kind of tried to take to heart quite a bit over the last couple of years. And it's this, it sounds kind of selfish at first, right? Just thinking that you are the center of your world. But understand the distinction that you are not the center of the world, but you are the center of your world.
Yeah, where that gets misconstrued is when you're like, I'm the center of the universe. You know, everything revolves around me for everyone else. When you have that perspective, that's when you're egotistical.
Right.
That's when you are, everything revolves around me. Like,
Look at how special I am.
Look at me. Like, no, yeah, that's a huge, massive distinction. And that's when it doesn't become selfish. It just becomes, it puts you in a position of power to create. So it's the world doesn't revolve around me. My world revolves around me.
Right. And the external world is always going to be whatever it's going to be. Your influence on it is really limited. And so you got to look at it from the perspective of life is always going to be changing around me. There's always going to be things happening around me. Circumstances are never going to be perfect for me, no matter what it is. You may have like those lucky moments where the stars align and it's like, okay, for one day, everything just lined up. But outside of that, it's usually going to be very different from what you want it to be, from what you thought it was going to be, from what you think is advantageous for you. And so you have to understand that the external world, so the world that's outside of you, is rarely going to put you in a position to win. So your only ability to do that is to build your world from the inside out.
Yes.
Yes.
I love that. Build your world from the inside out. I love that, because what that does is it requires you to instead look inward and to reflect inward. And sometimes that can be scary. If you have to be honest with yourself and look at what you've built your life upon, and this is a total can of worms, but having an honest discussion with yourself and really reflecting on what your world looks like for you and how you can impact that and what that means for your life and the decisions you've made is massive.
Right. And that's where...
And that's hard. That's really hard to do. Most people cannot face that music.
Right. Because everybody's made mistakes. No one's perfect. No one's done everything right in life. And the thing is, you just have to look at it and move on and start from a place of self-compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Well, me and one of our friends the other day, we were kind of having this conversation about self-compassion versus self-esteem, where one, self-compassion starts with you just loving yourself for who you are, which I think that's where everybody should start, right? Look inward, understand that your life has been everything that's led up to this point. So everything that's built up to this point, the good, the bad, the ugly, the in-between, it's
made you who you are.
Whatever it is, just have some grace, have some understanding for that position, have some compassion, have self-compassion, and be able to say, you know what, where I'm at right now is fine, right? Like where I'm at with my music abilities, it's not where I want to go, but that's okay. Where I'm at is where I'm at, and I'm going to accept it. But that's not where it should end, right? Because this is where self-esteem, where you're proud of the accomplishments and the things you've done and the person you are. Well, now that you've got self-compassion, from there, the next step is to do the things that will give you self-esteem. Always have self-compassion, but do what's necessary to make yourself proud of you and the work you've put in and what you've been able to accomplish.
Right.
So,
and then from there comes self-love. Because when you build that for yourself, then you can start to love yourself even more. And not from like a narcissistic position, but just more of that, it's like a conglomerate of the passion or compassion and the self-esteem coming together to be like, you know what, I actually really love myself. And I feel like most people don't. It's another indicator of how you feel about yourself is how you treat others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the way you treat others is a mirror of how you treat yourself. And oftentimes we're the worst to ourselves than anyone else. And so, as you reflect on your life and as you reflect on what you've built for yourself, and you guys, granted, I do know that there are some outliers here where they just came up in some really bad situations, and especially as children, we can't control a lot of our world. So that's not what I'm speaking to. What I'm speaking to is all you who are on your own and you're creating your own lives, okay? But we come up and we decide to take a hard look at who we are and what our world is and what's surrounding us. And that compassion is so critical and essential, because if you look at it and then hate yourself for it, that's not going to serve you. It's more of a, okay, I see you, I understand you, that's who I was. This is who I am right now. And having total honesty and connection to that, and being able to really turn the mirror on yourself and reflect inward. Because if you cannot do that, you will never change anything. You will never have the impact you want to have. You will never be able to build what you want to build. And it's so funny that this is such a critical thing to all creation.
Yeah.
to everything you want to create, whether it's your art, a job, a life, like a relationship. That honesty with yourself is where it all starts. And if you can reflect and have that honesty and look and say, what is working in my life and what is not working? Not I hate and stupid and good, bad. None of that. Is just what's working and what's not working. This is who I am. And I'm going to have compassion with that so that I can become the person I want to be tomorrow. And you cannot have that figure out in front of you of tomorrow unless you are firmly rooted in the facts of who you are today. And I don't think people really consider that. It's so much easier to blame others for our situation,
Right.
or to make a goal of who you want to be tomorrow and not understand why you're never getting there. And it's because you're not taking ownership of who you are now.
Right. And typically when you see the external world as evil, it, like you were saying, the internal world is evil. Like,
yeah.
you have to have compassion for yourself before you can have compassion for others.
Yeah.
Right. And again, it goes back to this idea of like, hey, I'm not going to let the external world rule what I see. It's funny because most people, especially at the studio, face so much doubt. I face so much doubt on a regular basis.
Well, it's
right?
hard, especially as an artist, to put yourself out there in that way and not be completely frightened of being obliterated for it.
Well, and you just see people who are good at it, and you're like, oh, I'll never be at that level. We had this conversation the other day.
Yeah, for sure.
Not about music, but about other things. And it was like, man, could I ever be that good? But the thing is, if you just let that external information come in and see where other people are at and put everything relative all the time, then really you're not building that solid foundation of looking inward first, finding your strength, finding your power, finding your ability, what makes you you, and what can really is like your superpower, and then forgiving all the things that aren't, right, that you can work on and progress. And it's only through doing that, like you said, you understand where you're at, you're okay with where you're at. Now you're going to build that foundation, and you're going to start to build the life that you want. You're going to build the 2021 that you want. You're going to build the 2022, and year after year. And it's not all going to get better at once. It doesn't just go from suck to majestic in 2 seconds, but
suck to majestic spectrum.
yeah. but it's a progress or process, and it's progress, and it takes time, and you have to be willing to look back, take that step back, and look at what you've done and build some stuttered pretty hard there for a bit, but build some self-esteem and just go, you know what? I built that. I've done that. This is the progress I've made this year. Good job.
Yeah, for sure. And that's when you really start to see things change. And I think a common thing you see in self-development and everything, especially with entrepreneurs, they say when you start to make decisions that are not building and creating, you see things start to fall apart about 3 months later. And
Right.
when you are building something and working your butt off, and you're pushing for good, and you're pushing to do things that are working, and you're pushing for change, and you're pushing to grow and expand, that usually you don't really see results from that until 6 months later.
Yeah.
It's interesting because it takes a lot longer to see the positive result that you want. And that's why the grind is so difficult. But it's so much faster to fall apart. And
Right.
you're like, oh crap, how did I get here so fast? Like, it's so interesting how that is so polarizing that way, and how building something incredible takes so much more time. And that's why once you start to get into that momentum and that groove, you don't stop, because it builds on itself and it starts to get really cool.
Yeah. And momentum, like you said, once you take the foot off the gas, you're not going to notice it at first. And so you're going to think in your head, oh, I don't need to work this hard.
I'm coasting.
Well, it becomes weird. It's like, okay, I stopped doing what I was doing. My life is still good. And then as that progresses, all of a sudden your life starts to get, not what you want it to be. And you're like, man, why am I unhappy? Why is this going on? And you don't relate it to the fact that you stopped doing the work, because it's such a delayed reaction that your brain almost doesn't even put it together and go, oh yeah, maybe it's because I stopped doing what made me happy.
Yeah.
Right. And then you start doing what would normally make you happy, back into that routine. And because, again, it's such a delayed response that you think, well, this isn't working. But really, you got to stick with it long enough to make you happy and then keep going with it.
Yeah.
It's a lifelong endeavor.
Well, and since we're talking about New Year's stuff, we can talk about working out because that's such a great way to relate this.
Sure.
It's like, oh, if I miss one workout, yeah, I'm not really going to feel it as much. But then it becomes easy to miss a couple workouts and then stop doing a lot of physical activity for weeks at a time. And then all of a sudden you gain 10 pounds. And it's not all of a sudden, but it's like a couple months later, right? And then it's like, oh man, I got to get back on my treadmill. And you get back on your treadmill, you start doing whatever you do to work out. And it takes you months to reverse it.
Right.
To shift that momentum back in the other direction and then lose that 10 pounds.
Yeah, and people look at the scale like 2 weeks later and they're like, I've only lost a half a pound. This isn't working. I give up. Yeah. I'd rather eat cookies.
I'd rather gain 10 more pounds. And so it's just interesting. It's a universal law, guys. Like even our bodies respond in that way with like this momentum shift of doing nothing and doing lots. And so to bring this back around, we just really want to encourage you guys to consider the world you do want to build. And again, I recognize that there's external factors that we can't change. Okay, own that they can't change and move on from that. Is it important to know what's going on in the world? Sure. It's important to keep your finger on the needle and just see what's going on. But it's also extremely important to not be completely swallowed up in it. And that was me like back in December. Oh man, guys, I was getting so sucked into social media and all the drama in the world and being like, I have to help change things and all this stuff. And it was the beginning of December and I got so depressed. And I've never been sucked into like social media and YouTube and all this stuff as much as then.
Yeah, it got bad.
It got real bad. And it's like, man, this should be the happiest time of the year. And I'm in this huge, massive pit. All of my energy was shifted into something that I cannot change. And I have no power over. Is it important? Yes, but I personally cannot change it. And so all of this energy that I could be throwing into creation and to changing my region and my part of the world, I was putting into something that I don't even have an impact on. And as a result, went into like a deep depression over it. And I lost so much time that I could have been putting into creating my world.
Yep.
And so Mike's like, delete the apps. Here, I'm taking your phone. And I did. I deleted all my social media, all my YouTube, like all of it's off my phone right now, y'all. I'm really glad that I have other people who can help me post because I'm not posting. I'm not on any platforms right now because I personally had to take a beat and reflect inward. I had to say enough with all this, enough with the drama. I don't need all this drama in my life. How I cannot impact this world if I'm caught up in drama. Can't create. You cannot create in that place. And so I went inward and it took me a couple weeks to get out of that darkness, to realize that I didn't need to panic if I hadn't checked Instagram and I didn't need to panic if I hadn't gotten an update on YouTube. I had to really take a step back to be able to do that. And it was so funny because I had to help a team member log into our Instagram yesterday. And I had to download the app for a second because I had to change some settings in it. And I had so much anxiety all of a sudden just having it on my phone for like 5 minutes and immediately deleted it again.
Yep.
Because I was like, I can't go to that place yet. I'm not ready to go back there yet and not have this power over my life and not have the self-control to do that. And so the thing that has been magical for me in the whole turnaround of a month of being off social media and being off all these platforms is that now my entire obsessive energy that I have and all of those hours that I was throwing into something that I have no impact on has completely been focused into something I can do. And I'm a musician. I create art. I communicate through music. And now all of that energy that I was wasting is now centrally focused into that. And I looked at it and I go, okay, I have to change me first. I'm going to change me. And as a result of that, I'm going to have clarity. I'm going to have power and fire. And then I'm going to be able to change and impact the lives of every single person I come into contact with. And while that might not seem like a grand scheme of things on the scale of millions of people, because it's not, it is though. Because if all of us do that, what then? What then happens? Because then you change that life, and then they go out and change that life, and the circle expands. It's like dropping a pebble in a pond. If you change you, and you grow you, and you expand you, then you change your family. If you change a family, you change a town. If you change a town, you change a region. If you change a region, you change a country. If you change a country, you change the world. So does it start with you focusing on you? Absolutely. Does it start with you yelling at people on social media and getting caught up in drama and being angry? No, it doesn't. And so take all of that energy, guys, all this energy that we've all been wasting, and let's focus it into changing ourselves, into positively impacting our communities, because that's where it has to start. And that's the only way real change happens. And from there, you create worlds. You create your life on your terms. And it's just the most beautiful thing. And then we're coming from this place of love and creation instead of hate. And I'm hoping for this reality for everyone this year, because man, 2020 was a hell of a year. It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, it's just something that was really different than what most people have were ready for, and so everybody's
we've all been tempered.
Learn to adapt a little bit. But yeah, I agree. So just to wrap it up, you want 2021 to be awesome? Make it awesome.
It's on you, guys. It's all on you. It's on us. Let's do it.
And with that, let's wrap this bad boy up. What is the question of the day?
The question of the day is, let's all take a minute to reflect. If you need to do a quick breathing meditation to go inward and take some breaths and just really think about, where in your life are you blaming others or an external situation or the world, or however you want to phrase it, for your situation? Where are you not taking accountability for the way your life is right now, or the thing that you haven't been doing, or like my whole big long spiel about getting caught up in drama on social media? And then what can you do to shift it? How can we shift that perspective to be able to then dive in and get to work on what you can do and putting your energy into a positive place for you to change your community?
All right, everybody. As always, please help us grow this podcast. If it brought you any value, if it helped you out, let somebody else know about it. Just give them a little heads up. Little what's up?
Just a heads up. What's
up? Yeah. Like it, subscribe it, do whatever. Just try and help us grow this thing. We really want to try and help people out as much as we possibly can. That's what our studio's always been about. That's what it will always be about.
Yes, man.
And just let us help make your 2021 great. And until next time, everybody.
Peace.